The old cinema stood at the edge of town, its faded marquee still flickering with the promise of a night filled with laughter and romance. The Maplewood Cinema had long been a relic of the past, its charm wrapped in peeling paint and a lingering scent of buttery popcorn. On this particularly chilly Friday night, a couple, Emma and Jake, stepped through the heavy doors, the brass bell above ringing cheerily to announce their arrival. They were looking forward to a light-hearted rom-com that promised to be the perfect escape from their hectic lives. As they approached the ticket booth, a vintage machine with ornate engravings caught their eye. It was unlike anything they had seen in years, old-fashioned and quirky. "Is this one of those vintage ticket machines?" Emma mused, a playful grin on her face. Jake shrugged, intrigued. "Why not? Let's try it." They fed the machine their money, and with a whirring sound, it dispensed 2 tickets adorned with swirling designs and the faint smell of nostalgia. They walked into the dimly lit theater, hand in hand, excitement buzzing in the air. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation, and the few scattered patrons were already settling into their seats. The screen flickered to life as they found a cozy spot in the middle row. They exchanged playful banter about the absurdity of some rom-com tropes, ready to immerse themselves in a world of comedic love. However, as the opening credits rolled, something strange began to happen. The cheerful theme music warped, twisting into an eerie melody that sent a chill down Emma's spine. She shot Jake a confused look, but before she could voice her concerns, the screen flickered violently. The images morphed and distorted, plunging them into a dark realm. Instead of a bright romantic comedy, the film transformed into a horrifying nightmare. Emma watched in horror as a grotesque figure, cloaked in shadows, stalked through a dilapidated version of the cinema itself. The camera panned to a scene where the character, a woman strikingly similar to her, was cornered in an alley, the monstrous figure drawing closer, its breath ragged and ominous. "Jake, what's happening?" Emma whispered, gripping his arm tightly. I don't know," Jake stammered, his heart racing. The flickering screen showed images that seemed to be ripped straight from their deepest fears. Jake's childhood home ablaze, the sound of frantic screams echoing in the background, while Emma's reflection twisted in the glass of a shattered window, morphing into a faceless entity. As panic set in, Emma tried to get up, but their seats had somehow become shackled to the ground. The plush velvet fabric felt suffocating, tightening around her like a vice. The lights dimmed further, the shadows growing deeper, enveloping them in a cloak of terror. "Let's get out of here!" Jake shouted, trying to pull at the armrest, but it was as if the theater itself had conspired against them. The exits were shrouded in darkness, the doors they had entered through now seemingly locked by an unseen force. "Maybe it's just a malfunction," Emma said, though her voice trembled. "Let's wait for it to end. It has to be a glitch." But the movie only intensified, each horrifying scene played out, tailored specifically to unearth their worst fears. Emma found herself reliving the traumatic experience of losing her father to a car accident, while Jake's nightmares of betrayal and abandonment came to life as specters danced in the shadows, whispering dreadful truths about their insecurities. "Emma," Jake cried, desperation creeping into his voice, "we need to find a way out. We can't just sit here." They both turned toward the screen, where the monstrous figure loomed closer, the darkness spilling out from the edges like ink in water. With no other option, they resolved to face whatever horror lay ahead, hoping that confronting their fears might somehow set them free. "Let's stick together," Emma said, determination flaring in her eyes. "Whatever this is, we'll get through it." They rose from their seats, fighting against the bindings of their fear. As they moved down the aisle, the grotesque figure materialized from the shadows on screen, stepping into the theater with a sickening grace. The audience around them had vanished, leaving only the two of them in a twisted version of reality. "Stay back," Jake shouted, thrusting his arm forward as if that would ward off the looming terror. The figure, with its hollow eyes and elongated fingers, merely tilted its head, mocking their fear. In a moment of bravery, Emma shouted, "You don't control us!" Her voice echoed in the cavernous space, surprising even herself. The figure paused, its grotesque features twisting into a semblance of confusion. The air shifted as the cinema transformed again, the walls bleeding with shadows that curled like tendrils. Suddenly, they were in a hallway lined with doors, each one marked with the symbols of their fears. Choose one. Jake urged, glancing over his shoulder at the creature inching closer. With trembling hands, Emma reached for a door emblazoned with the symbol of loss. I have to confront this, she said. It's the only way to move forward. Jake nodded, his own resolve building. He chose a door marked with chains, the symbol of his fears of being trapped and forgotten. They stepped through their respective doors, each one closing behind them with a heavy thud. Emma found herself back in the alley from her memories, the chilling air pressing against her skin. She could hear the familiar sound of tires screeching, the smell of gasoline mingling with fear. She took a deep breath and faced her past, ready to reclaim her narrative. The grotesque figure materialized again, but this time she didn't cower. You don't own me, she shouted, channeling her pain into strength. As she faced the entity, the darkness receded, revealing the alley in its true form. The horror that had once consumed her faded away, replaced by a newfound resolve. She turned to find Jake battling his own fears, confronting the shadows of abandonment. With their spirits intertwined, they both broke through their nightmares, bursting into a radiant light that enveloped them. The cinema flickered again, the sound of the audience returning as they merged back into the main theater, the screen showing nothing but the end credits rolling. The doors creaked open, finally free from their grip. Emma and Jake stepped out, breathing in the fresh night air, the chill of fear dissipating. They shared a glance, knowing they had survived something unimaginable together. As they walked hand in hand into the moonlit night, the Maplewood Cinema stood behind them, a cryptic enigma waiting for the next souls to wander through its doors. They had escaped, but they would never forget the haunting echoes of their fears, woven into the very fabric of the cinema itself.